Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Get ready for heart-touching stories. Don't forget to subscribe and let's begin.
The alarm never went off that morning. Not because I forgot to set it, but because I had been awake the entire night, lying on my back, staring at the water stain on my bedroom ceiling that had been there since I was 9 years old. It looked like a map of a country that didn't exist. For 18 years, I had been living in a country that didn't exist either, one where I believed truly and completely that my family loved me the same way they loved my brother Marcus. I was wrong. And the night before I disappeared, they made sure I finally understood that my name is Alara Voss. I am, or was, depending on how you look at it, the second child of Daniel and Patricia Voss of Cloverdale, Indiana. My brother Marcus is 3 years older than me, broad-shouldered and loud in the way that fills rooms, the kind of person who never had to try to be noticed. He played football badly, laughed too hard at his own jokes, and failed 2 grades of high school without our parents ever once raising their voices at him. He was, in the language my mother never used out loud but communicated in 1,000 quiet ways, the one who mattered. I was the one who made up for it. I got straight A's from the 5th grade onward. I joined the debate team, the Honor Society, the volunteer reading program at the public library on Saturday mornings. I stayed out of trouble because trouble was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every report card, every award, every teacher's glowing comment was a small deposit into an account I was building, the account of being worth something in my own home. It took me until I was 18 to realize the account was never going to pay out. The scholarship letter arrived on a Tuesday in March. I had applied to 7 universities. The one that wrote back first was Whitmore College in Vermont, a small, prestigious school known for its literature and creative writing program, the kind of place that had produced novelists and journalists and poets whose names I had written in the margins of my notebooks like prayers. The letter told me I had been awarded the Hargrove Full Academic Scholarship, which covered tuition, housing, and a modest stipend for 4 years. All I had to do was maintain a 3.5 GPA, which for me was like being told all I had to do was keep breathing. I ran downstairs with the letter in my hand, heart hammering, convinced that this was the moment. The moment my parents would look at me, really look at me, and see what I had built, what I had earned, what I had scraped together out of nothing but early mornings and library books, and the fierce, stubborn belief that my life was going to be more than Cloverdale. My mother was at the kitchen table, reading something on her phone. My father was watching television in the living room. Marcus was eating cereal directly from the box, leaning against the counter because Marcus had never once owned a bowl of his own in this house. I got the scholarship, I said. Whitmore, full ride. My mother looked up. She smiled the way people smile at a child who shows them a drawing, appreciative but distant, already moving on. That's wonderful, sweetheart. My father called from the other room. Which one was that again? Vermont, I said. It covers everything. I wouldn't need any money from you at all. Marcus looked at me then and something shifted in his face, something I didn't understand yet. Vermont, my mother repeated, and her smile faded just slightly at the edges. That's very far. I thought that was the end of it. I went upstairs and cried into my pillow, not from sadness, but from relief so powerful it felt like grief. I was finally actually going. I didn't know what was already being decided without me. 2 weeks later, my father called a family meeting at the dining room table. This was a rare event. Family meetings in the Voss household were reserved for things like car accidents and job losses, and the time Marcus got arrested for shoplifting at 17, and my parents sat us down to explain that it had been a misunderstanding, that the store manager had been unreasonable, that Marcus had simply forgot to pay. I sat across from Marcus. My parents sat at the heads of the table. My father had a legal pad in front of him, which meant he had prepared, which meant this was serious. We need to talk about the fall, my father said. I nodded. I was ready to talk about the fall. I was ready to talk about packing and dorm rooms and the bus schedule from Burlington. Marcus has decided to go back to school, my father continued. I looked at my brother. Marcus was 21. He had dropped out of community college after one semester, worked a series of jobs that lasted between 2 weeks and 3 months, and most recently had been unemployed for 7 months while living in our basement. Going back to school was by any measure a good thing, a surprising thing, but a good thing. That's great, I said, and I meant it. He's been accepted to Cloverdale State, my father said. Part-time for now, but it's a start. Okay, I said slowly. My mother reached across the table and put her hand over mine. This was when I started to feel it, the cold thing, the wrong thing beginning to uncurl in my chest. Thing is, she said softly, Cloverdale State isn't free. I know, I said, but my scholarship is. Whitmore doesn't cost you anything. Costs us you, my mother said, and she seemed to genuinely believe this was an argument. My father cleared his throat. We've been looking at the numbers, Alara. Between Marcus's tuition and the cost of getting him set up, he'll need a car to get to campus, and he's been talking about getting his own place. I need you to defer Whitmore, my mother said. The words landed flat and simple on the table between us like stones. Just for a year, go to Cloverdale State with Marcus. We'll sort out the finances, and then next year, Whitmore doesn't defer, I said. My voice was very quiet. I already checked. If I don't go in the fall, the scholarship goes to someone else. I lose it. Silence. And we'll find other options, my father said. Loans, grants, you're smart, you'll qualify for. I already have a full scholarship. I looked at my father, then my mother, then Marcus, who was looking at the table. I have a full scholarship to one of the best schools in the country. You're asking me to give it up so Marcus can have a car. That's not fair, my mother said sharply. No, it's not, I said. That's exactly what I'm saying. Meeting ended shortly after that with nothing resolved, and the cold thing in my chest had grown into something that filled my whole ribcage, pressing against my lungs, making it hard to breathe normally. Over the next 2 months, the pressure was applied in the particular way my family had always applied pressure, not loudly, not cruelly, but constantly, in the accumulated weight of 1,000 small moments. My mother sighing when Whitmore came up. My father mentioning casually how expensive Vermont winters were. Marcus borrowing my laptop to look at cars he wanted, as though the matter had already been settled. One evening I overheard my parents in the kitchen. She'll understand when she's older, my mother said. Family comes first, she knows that. She's stubborn, my father said. Always has been. She'll come around. I stood in the hallway outside the kitchen for a long time after that. I thought about all the years I had spent being good. All the mornings I had got up early to study while Marcus slept until noon. All the times I had swallowed my own needs because the family needed something. Always the family needed something, and somehow the family's needs always had Marcus's face. I thought about the water stain on my ceiling that looked like a country that didn't exist, and then very quietly something in me stopped bending. I didn't plan what happened next in any dramatic or meticulous way. There was no manifesto, no goodbye letter, no single breaking point. There was only the accumulation, and then on a warm night in late May, the decision that arrived not with fireworks but with the simple, settling certainty of something that had always been true. I was going to Whitmore. I spent 2 weeks doing things quietly. I called the Whitmore admissions office and confirmed my enrollment. I emailed my future academic advisor. I opened a bank account my parents didn't know about and transferred the money I had saved from 3 years of part-time work, babysitting, shelving books at the library, a summer of data entry for a local insurance firm. It came to just under $4,000. Enough. I applied for a summer research assistant position in Whitmore's English department and was offered a small stipend and early move-in access to the dormitories. I accepted. I packed slowly over many nights, one bag at a time, storing them in the back of my closet. I was not stealing anything that wasn't mine. I took my books, my clothes, the photograph of my grandmother who had died when I was 12 and who had been the only person in my family who ever read to me. I took the journals I had kept since I was 13. I took the small ceramic bird my best friend Danny had given me when we were 15, and which had sat on my windowsill ever since like a quiet promise. On the last night of May, I set my phone alarm for 4 in the morning and for the first time in weeks actually fell asleep. At 4 a.m. the house was the specific darkness of deep summer nights, thick and warm and close. I dressed without turning on the light. I had called a cab the night before, paying in advance through an app scheduled for 4:30. I carried my bags downstairs one by one, setting them by the front door with a care that was almost ceremonial. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, the room where so much had been decided without me, the room where my mother had held my hand and asked me to make myself smaller to make room for my brother. I didn't leave a letter. I thought about it. I had drafted several in my head and on paper, but every version either sounded like an accusation or an apology, and I didn't want to be either of those things. I wasn't angry, not exactly. I wasn't even sad, not in that moment. I was something cleaner than either. I was decided. I left the scholarship letter on the kitchen table. My copy, the one I had carried downstairs that Tuesday in March with my heart hammering. I had kept it all this time, tucked into the front pocket of my journal. I smoothed it flat against the table and set the ceramic salt shaker on top of it so it wouldn't move. Then I picked up my bags and walked out the front door of the house I had grown up in. The cab arrived 3 minutes later. The driver was a quiet man who didn't ask questions. The streets of Cloverdale were empty and orange-lit, familiar and strange the way things look when you know you're seeing them for the last time for a long while. We passed my elementary school, the library where I had volunteered, the intersection where I had learned to ride a bike. Marcus watching from the curb, bored. I did not cry. I looked out the window and felt, with a steadiness that surprised me, the particular sensation of a life rearranging itself into its true shape. By morning, I was on a Greyhound bus heading northeast, the Indiana flatlands giving way slowly to Ohio, then Pennsylvania, then the first tentative hills that promised what was coming. I had a window seat. I had a coffee from a gas station. I had a worn copy of Housekeeping by Marilyn Robinson in my lap, a book about women who leave, who drift, who choose the wilderness of an uncertain future over the suffocation of a life someone else has decided for them. My phone had notifications, a missed call from my mother at 7 a.m., then another at 7:15, then a text that read, "Alara, where are you?" and then nothing for a long time, and then a text from Marcus that said, "This is really selfish, you know." I read that one twice. Then I put my phone in my bag and picked up my book. I want to be careful about how I tell this next part because it would be easy to make it triumphant, to make myself the hero of a clean story where the girl escapes and everything immediately becomes golden and free. The truth is more complicated than that. I was scared on that bus. I was $25 short of what I had budgeted for the trip. I didn't know if I had made the right choice or simply the only choice, and I wasn't sure those were the same thing. But I also remember the exact moment when the bus crested a long hill in western Pennsylvania, and I saw the valley spread out below, green and enormous and indifferent to my whole history, and I felt something release in my chest that I hadn't known was held. I had spent 18 years making myself useful, making myself palatable, making myself small enough to fit in the space my family left over after they were done giving everything to Marcus. I had believed, in the way that children believe things they have no language for yet, that if I was good enough and quiet enough and smart enough, I would eventually earn the right to be fully seen. Sitting on that bus watching Pennsylvania roll past, I understood for the first time that the right to be fully seen is not something you earn. It is something you claim. And sometimes claiming it means leaving behind the people who taught you to earn it. I arrived in Vermont on a Thursday afternoon in early June. The campus was quiet, most students were weeks away, but the research office was open, and the graduate student who ran the program showed me to a dormitory room on the third floor of a building called Alcott Hall that smelled like old wood and open windows. The room was small. White walls, a narrow bed, a desk beneath a window that looked out over a courtyard filled with old oak trees. Nothing on the walls, nothing on the desk. A blank space waiting to be filled with exactly the life I was going to build. I set my bag down. I put the photograph of my grandmother on the desk. I set the ceramic bird on the windowsill. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the trees outside, their leaves moving in the June wind, and thought about my mother waking up that morning to an empty room and a scholarship letter held down by a salt shaker. And I let myself feel the full weight of what I had done, the grief of it, the necessity of it, the terrifying and clarifying loneliness of choosing yourself when the people who were supposed to choose you would not. I cried then. Good, clean tears, the kind that come after something has been resolved rather than before. That was 3 years ago. I am a junior at Whitmore now. I am studying literature and writing, and last semester I had an essay published in a small journal, and my advisor told me I should think about graduate school, and I think about it constantly with a hunger that still surprises me with its intensity. I called my mother 6 months after I left. The conversation was hard and incomplete and did not resolve anything cleanly. These things rarely do. My father and I speak occasionally, brief and careful exchanges like two people who knew each other in another life and are not sure yet what to make of the distance. Marcus and I do not speak. I carry no particular malice about this. Some distances once made simply stay. What I carry instead is this: the memory of that bus cresting the hill in Pennsylvania. The valley below, green and wide and asking nothing of me. The understanding, arriving quiet as sunrise, that a life is not something given to you by the people who love you incompletely. It is something you walk toward in the dark before anyone else is awake. The alarm never went off that morning, but I didn't need it. I had been ready for a long time.